That's right. Francis Farmer, baby. Holy shit. I would have abducted that from the music awards. I would have brought it back, but I would have abducted it for a weekend. Somehow keep it happy and shit. Just masturbate to it for a fucking weekend. I fucking love you. That's my girl. I seen I seen Sun on TV this morning. That's my bitch. So fucking hot. Fucking love you. No, well, you shouldn't believe everything you hear me say, because you tell incomplete stories. When the dead Kennedys wrote "Oh, Nazi punks fuck off," they were definitely talking to people like you. But I think, moreover, they were probably talking about things. They weren't talking to the Misfits. The Misfits were totally independent act. They booked their own shows. They stayed on this coast mostly. From time to time, they went to the once or twice went to the West Coast. They played in the Midwest. They and they were totally independent. They did a little bit of drugs and a little bit of drinking, but you wouldn't see them in clubs. They weren't like accessible like that. If you did see them in clubs, you'd probably see them at places like Max's Kansas City, which is because that's about as cool can fucking get. On any given night, you'd see John Lennon, you'd see Glenn Danzig or Bobby Steele there, everybody, Warhol, everybody, because Glenn used to date one of the waitresses supposedly. And yeah, that's about. After that, it was kind of hard to get into clubs because most of them were run by the gay nightclub and underground scene. I mean, you had places like the Limelight and other places like that, if they were doing bands at that point. But it was, yeah, the club. There was no club scene to speak of anymore. So you could catch the Misfits most anywhere. You can catch them, here in Jersey or in anywhere, in a Kiwanis club, in an old, you know, veterans hall, anything like that, which they would book themselves. I don't think they had an agent to book, and where they would sell their merchandise, and they weren't club people. You wouldn't, and they didn't really bond with other bands because they were so independent. They bonded with other bands that were like them, like the Necros. They had an affinity for Henry Rollins on the West Coast. Well, Henry before Henry went out to the West Coast, and they were able to at one point come to the whiskey. And what they found there was just repugnant to them, as it would be me too. Things like, they running into Nikki Sixx or Vince Neil, and Jerry and Doyle chased them out of the club and into the street. I would too. At that point, here we're coming from New York, and it's already hard enough to play. But when Jelllo Biafra wrote "Nazi punks fuck off," he was thinking of people just like you, but moreover, bands like the Exploited, where they're from Scotland and England. He's the son of a police officer, and the fallout of World War II was still new. Shut up over there, So all those bands, even the Beatles, everybody was affected by that. And they had songs like Hitler's in the Charts again. And they had an ongoing banter with each other a lot of the time. I'm not sure. The Dead Kennedys might have run into them in Europe somewhere. I'm not for sure. But that's exactly who he was talking to, and other people like you. That's an old story from Flipside, or from I forget where it was, but it was in Flipside Fanzine. I don't know, but it has nothing to do with the Misfits. The Misfits didn't give a fuck what the Dead Kennedys were doing. I don't think they had total tunnel vision and were locked onto their particular inimitable brand of rock and roll music. They had little time for the games. And I mean, and you can hear it if you get certain Exploited shows. You can You can hear Waddy Buchanan say, "Shut the fuck up over there." You can hear Waddy Buchanan say things like, "This one's for Jello Biafra's. This one's for Jello Biafra. I fucked his wife," and shit like that. Not that Jello has a wife, but things like that. Those two politics there don't see eye to eye really. The Exploited were trying to make semi-political music, and those politics do not go hand in hand. And it's definitely for people like you. The lyrics went, punk ain't no religious cult. Punk means thinking for yourself. You ain't hardcore when you spike your hair. When a jock still lives inside your head. Nazi punks, fuck off. If you come to fight, get out of here. You ain't no better than the bouncers. We ain't trying to be the police, but when you ape the cops, that ain't anarchy. Nazi punks, fuck off. 10 guys jump one. What a man. You fight each other, and the police state wins. You stab your backs when you trash our halls. Why don't you trash a bank if you've got real balls? That's definitely for people like you. And it was for Waddy Buchanan too. But I don't see you nearly as good as the Exploited were. The Exploited were great. Don't get me wrong. I could see both sides of the coin. I loved them. But there was probably some kind of jealousy, maybe with the Exploited and the Dead Kennedys, maybe I'm impartial. But no, the Misfits don't have nothing to do with that. The Misfits didn't tout Nazism. They wrote about it in a journalistic way, because it's certainly fascinating. And schools would teach you that back in the day. I mean, it's something that all of mankind is fascinated with. But I guess it's how you do it. No, I don't suppose Jello Biafra would ever, or Glenn Danzig would ever find each other, you know, interesting like that. I think you're thinking of Halloween, the song Halloween, which was again not written for the Misfits. It was just because the Misfits lived every day like it was Halloween, which is the point of Halloween. The point of Halloween is saying, we're punk rock, we dress up and blah 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 blah. We're unique, we do what we want to do. We don't wait one day a year to do it. We do it every day. The Misfits didn't come alive on Halloween. That was just, well, they did, but I mean, they did it all year round. They did it. That was not, no, that's another rumor. Jello Biafra wouldn't look down on that. I think, the point of that is, why don't you take your social regulations and shove them up your ass? So it's Halloween. You feel like dancing. You feel like shining. You feel like letting loose. So what's it going to be, babe? You better know. And you better plan. You better plan all year. You better plan all week, plan all month, better plan all year. Because your role is planned for you. There's nothing you can do but stop and thinking through. What would the boss say to you? And what would your girlfriend say to you? And the people out on the street, they might glare at you. And what do you know? You're pretty self-conscious too. What you going to be after Halloween? Yeah, the Misfits celebrated it every day, just like the Dead Kennedys did. The Freak Fest. Just to clear that up. And that song again could be for you. What would your boss, what would your girlfriend, what would the people out on the street think of you if you did it for real and didn't do it, fake?